have accountability. Solomon goes to the daughters of Jerusalem and he says, hey, girls, can you help us in our relationship? I need you to talk to my girlfriend so that she knows that we shouldn't be going in these directions. And in doing that, he has enlisted the help of trusted friends who can hold them accountable in their dating relationship. I think that's entirely proper. Young people out there, you should be talking to your parents about this side of your life, and you're like, oh, horror. But listen, this is how we get off sides, how we get off track in our relationships with God. We take all the things that we say, this is appropriate for me to share with other people, and here's all the things that are way too personal, intimate, and private, and we try to handle those on our own, and we can't. And we've been tricked into thinking that we should just keep this over here in its own special place and not deal with it or open it up to other people. It's just a lie. Involve trusted people in this area of your life. Have them pray with you and pray for you and hold you accountable to the standards you set. And then finally, avoid situations where your standards can be compromised. In James chapter 1, it talks about how sin works. And sin doesn't function by just like, here's the sin, now do it. It usually has this kind of warm-up period. Have you ever noticed that? The Bible tells us in James 1 that sin entices us. It kind of just hovers out there, and all of a sudden our gaze is diverted, and now we're looking at what is the potential of sin, and then it takes us and it hooks us at some point, and then it happens. That's how sin works. So the way to deal with sin is not at the point of sinning, but way back here before it ever gets started. And that brings in, oh, be careful, little feet, where you go. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Are you with me? You got to go back there and deal with it. So single people who are dating right now, if you have your own place, I challenge you by the gazelles and by the does. And what that means there is when he says, by the gazelles and does, do not awaken or arouse, he's saying by everything that's precious, by everything that's pure and righteous. If you're single out there and you got a place of your own, I challenge you by the gazelles and the does to never bring one of your dates back there. And you're like, that's entirely inconvenient. Yeah, it is. And it's going to make it really hard for you to get all funky with each other too, right? I mean, if you're not in a place where the funk can happen, then the funk does not happen. Are you with me? Don't take long drives down dark roads and park. I just want to talk. Yeah. Date with other people around. Have like a deadline. Like as you get more tired, your inhibitions go down. You're less able to enact your standards. Have a cutoff time for your dates. Some of you are like, "Are you serious? I'm 30." Yeah, I'm serious. I'm totally serious. You know, the video we saw, I mean, some people, they as they get longer into this, some of you older singles, they just start saying, I'm not looking for Mr. Right anymore. I'm just looking for Mr. Right now or Mr. Anybody. And we start to soften on our standards. Don't ever do that. Got to keep the fire in the fireplace. Knowing, here's your blanks. I know some of you are going to come up after first service. Everybody's like, what were the blanks? Just give me the blanks. Know when to run. Know when to run. Know when to run, especially in the area of physical intimacy. Let's keep going because we've got to keep going. Verse 8, she's speaking and she says, listen, my lover, look, here he comes. She's so excited, she can almost see him. Here he comes. He's leaping across the mountains. Right? And he's bounding over the hills. My lover is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look. There he is. He's virile. He's like a 10-point buck. She says, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the window, peering through the lattice. He's a peeping Tom. Isn't that great? Yeah. No, that's not what this says. He's not weird like that. He's probably standing outside of the house or the compound's gates, and he's like, one of us, if you've ever waited for your loved one at the airport. Have you ever been up again, back before they made you stay in your cars to get them, but back when we could actually go to the gates and wait for your loved ones to come, were you ever the one who was like bending over the line, just looking, there's Grandma? That's what he's doing, right? Or there's your husband or your wife. I should have said husband or wife, and that's, yeah. Not grandma. But you get the point? That's what he's doing. And so just so we're all clear, she's crazy about him and passionate about him. He's crazy about her, passionate about her. And that should happen in relationships. Look what it says next. It says, flowers appear on the earth. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over something. My lover spoke to me and said, this is Solomon in verse 10, saying this to his woman. He says, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me. See, the winter is past. The rains are over and gone. What season is it? Spring. Good. Nice play. Flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of the doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one. Come with me. Hey, he's getting all poetic on her. I mean, picture her standing outside the gates of where she lives, and he's kind of doing the Romeo and Juliet thing, talking up to the window or whatever, and he's just saying, hey, babe, you're like springtime to me. Our relationship is fresh and new and like the buds on the fig trees, and let's go away and frolic in the meadow, right? And it's all this kind of language. You could kind of see, even in their talking to each other, their love for each other. There's passion. It's springtime. Did you know that your relationship is meant to have a springtime feel to it? And here's what happens almost always in marriages, is that we experience spring. You know what honeymoon means, right? I learned this week. Honeymoon means sweet month. The moon cycle takes about a month, and so honey is sweet and moon is month. It's the sweet month. And we go through our honeymoon phase. Maybe it's longer than a month. Maybe we have this sweet time, first year, second year, but then that first kid comes. Yeah, I always blame it on the kids. Yeah, all the kids are like, hey, dude. First kid comes, second kid comes, first job, second job. You just kind of get into life, you get into the rotation, and your relationship, your romance goes from spring to summer. We had a good time in that phase, but then fall comes, and then winter. You ever been in the restaurants where that older couple comes in, they sit down on the table next to you, and they never speak? Maybe you are that couple. I'm about to bag on you. They sit there, they get their menus, they read their menus. You know that they can speak because when the waiter comes, they order. There's actual words and things like that, but then as soon as the waiter comes, they just go back to stirring their coffee, staring off into space. They eat their food, and they stand up and walk out, never having said a word. It's wintertime. Wintertime in that relationship. I mean, maybe they're just so old, they're like, well, we might as well stick together. There's no joy. And that's not how it's supposed to be. It's not how God made this thing. It's supposed to be springtime in our relationships. How do we make springtime stay in our relationships? Look what it says next. It says, verse 14, Solomon speaking to her, he says, my dove in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places on the mountainside. He likens her to a fragile bird who has made its nest in the clefts or in the cracks of the rock. When I grew up in Massachusetts, I lived on the harbor there in Boston, and there were these, I should have, after 3 sermons, figured out what their names were, but there were these birds that used to burrow into the sides of hills that had been kind of carved out by the erosion and stuff, and they would make their nests in sides of hills. We've all seen eagles' nests that are way up in the top on the crags of a mountain. Birds like to build their nests in those places. Why? For the view? No, for safety, right. They have to protect themselves. They have to protect their young. In fact, if you find a nest on the ground, that's pretty much the end of that little bird family, isn't it? Unless you're that soft-hearted person who puts them in a box and then they die eventually. All right. Sorry. No, they got to keep their nests up high. It's where they're safe. So here's the picture. He says, listen, my gentle dove, my gentle and fragile and beautiful little girl, little wife, whatever, little wife to be, who hides herself deep inside the crags. Come on out. Look what it says next. It says, he says, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. He says, let me see the real you. And listen, if you want to keep springtime going in your relationship, you've got to continually work at communicating at this level. The first thing that we need to know is that we need to know when to run. The second thing we need to know is we need to know how to talk.